This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
I'll be honored to have on once again the Honorable Judge Joe Brown, minus his signature mustache. Got new look, new day. How you doing today, sir?
Got a new show coming out next year, so we have a new look. And
all right, look good, smooth, clean. All right, I like that. Still the same old judge though. So I want to ask you a question because we just got through wrapping up the Darrius Stewart rally for justice. There's been a lot of controversy about how the way the case was handled by the TBI and Amy Roderick. And I want to know, we had elected USDA, what would you have done differently?
I assure you it would not have proceeded as it has so far. What you're really getting here is a trend that's going around the country. People are uncomfortable, their jobs are not secure, their purchasing power is low. They don't know what the future is going to look like, and it does not seem that there is any answer being given to them by their erstwhile leaders. They get frustrated and need scapegoats, and all across the country you're getting ethnic groups at each other's throats again after a hiatus of some years, and there's a lot of tension. Them, those, and us. That's not good for the country. Young Darrius is unfortunate, and in a sense he's a martyr to this situation that has developed. The attention that needs to be paid here is that when you have a community, that community needs to feel comfortable with what it perceives to be the justice, the fairness, the compassion that is being delivered to it. Being a cop is a dangerous occupation, but it goes with the territory and kind of sort of, if you can't take the heat, get out the kitchen. Good police work is always appreciated. We need that thin blue line of the police, but that thin blue line has to understand that it separates a community from lawlessness. It is not supposed to be suppressing that community, and that community needs to understand that it also is supposed to have a fundamental order. They have the phrase Black Lives Matter, and that's a matter of perspective. If you happen to be black and your life appears to you to be, let's say, at risk for reasons that are not ordinarily in play, then you have a right to say, my life for those who look like me matters. Whether you're Jewish and you're talking about how we didn't back them up before World War II against A.L.L, or you're talking about, was it wise to have dropped that bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima? You've got a lot of questions. Did we have weapons of mass destruction to justify so many of our youth being missing from us today? You see, these are questions that anyone might ask. So it's a legitimate question, it's a legitimate position, and we work better if we work together to make these things resolved.
Okay, but what have you done? Like, you think that she needed permission from the grand jury? A lot of people are confused about the process.
Look. Here's the way the grand jury works.
Okay.
There are two ways with the grand jury, and there's a separate way. A defendant and the prosecution can agree that there is probable cause. That's prosecution by information, goes directly to criminal court.
Yes.
You can have a situation where the district attorney requests permission to address the grand jury, and he gives them information, and if they approve the issuance of an indictment, then one is returned. There's a third process where the grand jury itself can issue subpoenas and bring in its own witnesses, and they proceed by what they call a presentment. In other words, a grand jury can say, stay out, we're doing this. For instance, let's say, heaven forbid, you're investigating the district attorney, him or herself, and you want to investigate whether or not there's probable cause to believe there's criminality. So there are three ways: presentment, indictment, and information. Information doesn't involve the grand jury. So TBI doesn't have control over what the grand jury has put in front of it. The attorney general for the district does, if the grand jury gives that individual permission to address it.
Well, why did she say she would see involuntary manslaughter and the grand jury came out with a different verdict or a different sense if they have the same information at their disposal?
I'm not privy to what happened in terms of what the grand jury had put in front of it. And there's also, you see, there's also this process too. Someone investigating can simply file an application for warrants, swear out the warrant on the charges, the person gets arrested or charged, and has to appear before a general sessions court wherein they would be entitled to a preliminary hearing or to waive it, and then go through information presentment or indictment. So there are other ways besides going in front of a grand jury. Most of the prosecutions in this county are initiated by an initial arrest or charge on a warrant sworn out by a general sessions judge.
Well, actually, this too. You speaking of warrants, that they say the guy had warrants from something that happened when he was a minor.
No. There were no warrants. From investigation, first off, it appears that Officer Schilling never called to check and see if there were warrants or warrants.
What he never? So you said there was no warrants out?
Well, there weren't.
Wow.
Now,
okay.
4 days after the deceased became deceased, it would appear that in Iowa, an arrest warrant was issued for something that happened 6 years ago.
Right.
When he and two of his cousins were 12 and 13 years old, and they seem to have been playing with each other, and then there was a family relative that was trying to basically extort other family members, and her information resulted in a warrant 4 days after the young man was slain. A little suspicious.
Wait a minute, okay, Judge, he was a passenger in a traffic stop, and they said, the news said it was a warrant issued on June 30th.
There was no warrant.
There was no warrant when he was stopped on July 17th.
There was no check made to see if there was
There was no check made, and he was a passenger in a...
See, he was in the rear.
Okay,
see, here's what happened.
Okay.
The driver had ID. The front seat passenger had no ID. The young man that was slain had ID. See, the young man worked for FedEx, and you know they run a pretty tight background check system. He had been accepted to go to Memphis State University, or Memphis University, and he was interested in doing pre-med. So this is a kid that's done well. His mother raised him all by herself, got no child support, no help, no nothing.
That's right.
So he's on his way to college. He's working at FedEx, and
so you tell me, like, wow, this is just mind blowing. Because a lot of people, it's like people trying to get a handle like the narrative of the story. So you're saying that there was no warrant before July 17, 2015?
No, there wasn't. And see, the other thing too is, depending upon what version of facts you're listening to, the vehicle was stopped for a headlight violation.
Right.
The deceased had his ID. Front seat passenger has no ID. The person in the driver's seat has his ID. He's issued a citation for an equipment violation. The deceased young man is removed from that vehicle and put into the back of a squad car. The other two are allowed to leave. At that point, there is no call in to see if there are any wants and warrants. The deceased and the squad car leave the scene. They move to a different location. At that point, the deceased is purportedly removed from the back of the squad car. He winds up dead in the middle of a grass field across from a large apartment complex 30 to 40 yards away from the squad car. There is video.
Well, I know it happened on New Direction Church grounds. So my thing is, if they said he was resisting arrest, how come he got into the squad car voluntarily, it seems?
How come he got removed from the squad car?
How he get removed? He drove up the street.
And then how did you get 35 to 40 yards away from the squad car into the middle of a grass field?
I'm gonna ask you this. Let me throw something out there. You think they knew each other? Like, did they have a previous relationship in terms of knowing each other?
I can't say with assurance. I've heard such talk.
So let me ask you this: you as, let's say, attorney, district attorney, or even as director of police, what should be done with Officer Schilling, Colonel Schilling? What would you do with him in terms of his career?
Well, first off, I think it would be fundamental fairness to the whole community if the police department investigated on its own what seemed to be some apparently egregious violations of police procedure. That's one thing. And I think from what I have become privy to, assuming it's accurate, there is a need for further training here. I have had a background of maybe 50 years, 49 years in martial arts personally, and I'm looking at this situation perhaps differently than others might look at it, and I have some questions. I do know that this city has escaped various riots, uprisings, and general civil insurrection that have fallen upon the heads of other cities in this country over the last half century. And I think that circumstance should dictate some effort being made to make the community feel confident. There is not a good thing being said around. Some people just take it as ordinary happenings, but there are things being said at cocktail hours, in bars, on the streets, on the jobs. And that's not really good for the well-being of this city and this county. So it probably would be a better thing if a very intense investigation had been done or were to be done, or if the feds got involved in it on a potential civil rights violation, then at least make the people feel like they got, the young man got, his mother got justice.
Well, it's just like, when you brought the term justice, like, what does justice look like for the family? What can they do in terms of staying within the system?
They have some remedies. The federal government could proceed for violation of civil rights. Now, they have been paying attention to Memphis because there are some places, even institutions around here, that they have found to have engaged in egregious violations of people's rights. There is a civil remedy. Look at the O.J. thing. O.J. was acquitted of the criminal charges, but he was found liable to the Goldman and Nicole families for civil damages for wrongful death. That's also a possibility. I don't represent her. People come to me and talk. They confide in me. They talk to me. I try to dispense wisdom, advisement, just general advisement, and moderate what's going on amongst various factions in the community. So she's got legal representation, and it'll be up to them as to what happens from this point on.
Max, just like from a legal point of view or whatever, like what the father, like you talk about, she raised her son by herself, and there's a big ado about them having separate lawyers. The mom got her team and the father got his team.
It's like this. Remember the last time you went to a funeral, the program said in various ways, the deceased, the dearly beloved, was survived by the following. And you got a list of grandparents, parents, nieces, nephews, brothers and sisters. Some of them didn't get along well, but they're all survivors. Anybody that is a survivor of a certain type will have a right to pursue an action for wrongful death. So the father, of course, has his right to pursue that. The mother has the right to pursue that. They can do it independently or jointly.
It's like there's a lot of, they down on the same page, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, I saw the press conference last week. He was there with his legal team and some other folks, religious leaders, and then she's saying one thing on social media. So does it look bad to see that play out in front of the public, especially with, social media?
I won't say anything, but, when you go to a funeral or you know the family or you hear what's being said by family members, there's always somebody that didn't have much to do with the deceased
Right.
but wants to get every penny they can get out of whatever the deceased had in their estate. So I don't know if that's going on here with the father or not. I don't know him. I've never met him. I haven't even seen one of his interviews, but oftentimes family members will have something to say about each other when it comes to the attachment to the dearly departed.
Max just getting away from the, I guess the legal stuff, like the TBI report is 800 pages, and from my understanding, the family wants it not to be public right away. They want to redact some things. Do you think that's the right protocol?
Which part of the family?
I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying? Like, who want to read?
Well, you understand sometimes when you get into what goes on with a homicide, there are things that come out that may be embarrassing to some people. There may be things that come out that are rumors. There may be things that are commendable. We don't know. So it just depends on what's happening here. I mean, one party who may have a survivorship right may have said something negative about another. We don't know. TBI investigations are generally kept confidential because TBI sometimes investigates law enforcement or elected officials or appointed officials. So I can see the point on that. They're a statewide agency.
It also is taxpayer funded, right? I mean,
well, yeah, but you see there are other remedies. If the feds get involved, then you get their massive subpoena powers. And there are various freedom of information considerations that may be at play. And I can't tell you right now because I haven't had cause to look into those things. And I'm not representing anybody except perhaps the interest of the general public.